Hey everybody, today we're going to cover something that I think a lot of men shy away from, right? Especially when I say the second half of the word. The first one is mental wellness. I don't really like using the word mental health because it makes it sound like there's something wrong with you, where there's really nothing wrong with any of us. Mental wellness and emotional resilience and intelligence.
Yeah,
right.
It's a good topic.
And what that really means.
It's an important topic.
Yeah. So I'll start out, and then Kevin's gonna jump back in because I think we have a lot to cover in this one. But when we talk about emotional wellness, there's lots of things that will consistently happen to you across your life. Some are going to be super traumatic, which are going to cause PTSD, which you know about having been in the military. I know about of coming from a very, very terrible country, and that's the most extreme version. But that mental awareness of where you are takes depth. You don't necessarily have to have been shot at in Afghanistan to have PTSD.
Correct.
You could have had a girlfriend leave you. Right, you could have had a traumatic experience within your life. You could have driven in traffic this morning and almost died in a car accident.
Yep.
Right, and there's a trigger your body puts into that. Now, it's not a competition here.
Yep.
Everybody experiences those things on a different level.
It's called post-traumatic stress. It's from an event or something. It may not even be a specific event. It could be multiple things that are just subconsciously constantly going on. And in your case, I think, like in you and Helene's story, you guys may not have even realized you had PTS until after you were out of that environment.
100%.
Because everything that you just dealt with was just your life. It's just what you had to live through.
Yeah.
And then you look back on it when you're in a space that's now safe and you're free to be like, okay, I'm good now.
Yep.
And then you realize that wasn't really very normal.
Yeah.
But that was a lot of hard stuff to go through.
Yeah, which I think ties back into what you went through. You know, coming back when you're in Afghanistan,
you just don't think about it.
You don't think about it. I got a job to do. Right?
That's right.
I got my orders. I got to fill them out. But the minute you land and that's done, I'm not going to get deployed again. You kind of go, holy crap.
Well, I want to dive into that a little bit, not to go right into the whole military guy. There's a lot of veterans out there. And my story with this is like I have officially been diagnosed with PTS. They say PTS now, not PTSD, but I've officially been diagnosed through the VA. I had a lot of guilt for I think it was like 14 years post-service time for me before I finally went to see a professional, specifically at the VA, to get that diagnosis because I felt guilt, which is also a form of dealing with things, right? And I think there's a lot of veterans that like come out on the backside and you go, well, I look in the mirror and everything's intact and I'm fine. So I shouldn't be like, I'm good. And then the other thing I had going against me was, and actually I still know people in the community that can say there's still a little bit of this. A lot of the professionals that had clearances would not say what was really going on out of fear of getting clearances suspended or put on hold because their mental wellness or the government lingo, mental health was not solid, so you were therefore a risk. Yeah. So you would lose your clearance and get put suspended. Well, that's your paycheck. So now you don't have a job. That's real.
And that's what's interesting about that is you can generally what happens is and correct me if I'm wrong. A lot of your guilt, specifically in what I know about your story, is you come back and as you say, everything's intact. I didn't lose a limb. I wasn't shot. I got out and I'm okay. Right. And because you're okay and there's thousands, 100,000s of other guys who are not okay, you almost feel guilty of having any type of reaction to it because I was okay.
Bro, so my first assignment was with the 4th Infantry Division. I was at headquarters doing intel, supporting these guys doing combat ops. I got back after that deployment. We went to like a big theater there. It was like the reception area for all the units. And in front of my very eyes, like however far apart we are, I watched a guy rejoin his group of guys in a wheelchair with no legs. Yeah. And I saw that in front of me and I went, who am I to say I have a problem? Yeah. When you see that, like literally, I mean, he still had bandages on. Yeah. Because the wounds were so fresh. So fresh. Like, I mean, I hate to say it shakes you. I don't know if that's the right word to use, but like when you see that, you immediately go, I'm good.
I walked out. I'm lucky.
I'm good.
Yeah.
Right? That guy, he doesn't have legs.
Yeah.
And I'm going to go say that I have a problem because of what I did.
Yeah. And I think part of that is, if you relate that back to just the average guy who's going through problems in life, right? Whether it be a divorce, a breakup, a relationship issues that they're currently having, financial issues, trying to get your business off the ground.
Yeah.
It doesn't really matter. But what happens is any type of stressful situation can create that stress base. Now, we're talking about the ultimate extreme. I think war, right? Going into a war zone and coming out of that, we're talking about the most extreme version of PS you can get, right?
Well, I don't want to say this is simple, but let's say you walked in to find a loved one who passed away.
Yeah.
Yes. I mean, that's a traumatic event.
100%. And I think with guys, what happens is we're put into this line where we're told to say, well, if you're okay, you're okay. Be okay.
Be a man.
Just suck it up, push it all deep down and let it go. But what happens is, as well as we are doing a lot of personal work on ourselves, the more I push it down, the more it leaks out in other places.
100%.
And this is the point where we talk about mental wellness and emotional resilience. Because what happens is, as much as we don't want to think of ourselves as men as these emotional beings, we have just as much emotion as women do. The only
100%.
difference is our emotion are different, right? Men are from Mars, women are from Venus. It's
different.
They're different, but it's still an emotion. And I think with us, what often happens is ours, we think of emotion as breaking down crying, right? Realistically, most of the time, most of the things that happen with men, and you and me both have this experience, it comes out as rage, hate, and this warm feeling that you want to just rip a wall down.
Yeah.
And you can't really, not really narrowing it down, and you keep ignoring it. And then what we do is we do you do the bro things. You go punch things, you go do jiu-jitsu, you go to the gym and you lift as heavy weights as you want. And all of that is great outlets, but you're never really dealing with the downline.
It's still there.
It's still there, right? And those are all great outlets, but like we're talking in the medical industry, symptoms, you can treat symptoms all day long. They don't solve the problem. We need to get down to the core.
That's right.
And until you can actually have that quiet conversation with yourself and you be honest, and there's lots of resources to help you through this, but once you make the decision, I think for both of us and for a lot of people that we've worked with, the minute you've made the decision to go, you know what, enough is enough. I don't want to be that person.
I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired.
Yeah. I now need to go and get down to this. And what happens is when you do that, it's going to bring up some uncomfortable memories. Yeah. It's going to bring uncomfortable feelings to the top. There's going to be parts of yourself that you are not going to like.
That's right. And
once you have an acceptance for that and you take the good with the bad and you go, I am good, and you now can move forward, that is the only time you can heal.
Yeah.
So I think mental resilience for me is, first of all, not being afraid to sit down and be quiet with yourself. And, you'll hear men talk about, I have a lot of demons. We all have demons, right? But until you sit down and you let those demons out, and you let them out, and why are you letting them out? You're letting them out because until you let them out, if you keep holding them down, you keep them in a box, they'll always be in a box.
One of the things for me, and I'll share, I've seen a lot of, so I wasn't a shooter, I was an intel guy. Yeah. But I have seen a tremendous amount of combat footage.
Yes.
And direct combat footage. Okay, executions and various
all
things. All the worst things, right? I remember specifically saying, and I'm fortunate that I've seen the things that I've seen and can sleep at night. Okay, yes. So I'm not one of these guys that went to bed and would have nightmares.
Yeah,
I'm fortunate in that regard. But I remember saying at one point in time where I was like, how would I say it? I would say something to the effect of I'm numb to it, I guess would be the way I'd say it. I'm just numb to it's like my soul is, I've seen the worst of the worst. My soul is numb to what I've seen. And so whether it was, the worst of things of humanity, if you will, I just found myself where I was like, I'm just numb to what it is. Right. And I felt as if it was almost like my soul was not there anymore.
Yeah.
And I had to go there to overcome it, if that makes sense what I'm trying to say. I had to say, I don't watch that stuff anymore.
Yeah.
I will. Every once in a while, a buddy might send me a video to a combat footage. And to be honest, this sounds bad to you, but I am fascinated by, the military and war and all that stuff. I think there's a lot of history. All men are, right? All
men are.
So there is a part of me that I'll watch a combat movie and just love it. Okay. Yeah. Because I just like those movies. Mm-hmm. But it's a movie footage in today's world is much different than it used to be. But it's like I still will watch them and go, okay, I'm enjoying the story, I'm enjoying it. But the direct links to some of these, like there's, I think, the website crazyshit.com or something like that, where they got some really up close and personal like combat footage. If I get videos like that sent to me, I don't watch them anymore because I don't want to go back to that place in a sense, because to me, I've overcome it and it's not necessary to go back there.
Yeah, you don't need it anymore.
I don't need it anymore, right? And I know guys that they're like legitimate military guys that I know that were, deployed bunch of times. They literally miss it.
Yeah,
they literally say, "I miss the simplicity of that lifestyle."
Yeah, it's the innate warrior in all men.
It is, but I also feel like the guys saying that they miss the simplicity of that lifestyle are running from their actual realities.
No doubt, because when I say that is all men, right, gravitate towards action, right? So if we talk about films, they'll gravitate towards action films. The genre is dominated by men watching, right? It's because that is ingrained in us. We are protectors. We are designed for combat. Our fists, the way our bodies move, we are designed to protect. We are designed to take impact. We're designed to give impact, right? Guns are just the evolution of that process. War is just the evolution of that process.
Well, I remember, and I'm thinking of a few different of my closer friends that things that we would talk about, and like these are guys that whether from the military days, from my college days that went to serve, like guys that I've known that have actually been overseas, and some of them truly in combat arms positions would say, and I know other folks that have put stuff like this on social media, they miss the simplicity of war because you just did your job. You didn't have to you didn't really worry about kids, family, money, all that stuff. You just worried about staying alive and fighting.
You know why? It's because they miss the simplicity of the lack of dealing with emotion.
Yeah, and that's where I was going, okay? And the reality is, like, they have marital struggles, they have personal life struggles, job struggles, money struggles, you name it, right?
Yeah.
Like I got ex-wife troubles, custody battles, like all these, like, real problems in life. And then, oh, by the way, one of the biggest, I think, challenges that I faced, like, and I just had a conversation with someone yesterday that flat out talked about brain fog.
Yeah.
Right? If you're a guy listening to this right now and you have brain fog, you need to pay attention to this episode.
Yeah.
Right? Because brain fog is very real for people that have neglected themselves mentally and physically.
Yes.
And I was guilty of this for years, and I didn't understand why I had brain fog. And the conversation I had with this gentleman was young, okay, and he's like, "Yeah, I got brain fog." I'm like, "Listen up, buddy, I can help you."
Yeah.
And the reality is, like, brain fog is a leading indicator of there's baggage and things underlying that need to be taken care of. First and foremost, your physical health and well-being. Your mental health and well-being needs to be looked at. But you're going to fix a lot of things by just dialing in your fitness and nutrition.
Yeah.
But then getting your hormones checked, and if you're a combat veteran or military veteran, check your hormones. Get your blood work. We always talk about doing blood work because it starts there. But a big common factor in a lot of veterans is they come back with jacked up hormones, especially operators, the dudes that did a lot of high level stuff. They're
elevated cortisol levels, low levels of adrenaline. They have adrenal burnout, which is a massive issue with PS. Yeah, your adrenals are completely burnt out, which means that you're constantly fatigued. You have that brain fog. You feel like your body can't move. It's because, as you say, is regardless of what we believe, right? When you see certain things, even if you're watching on a movie, your brain doesn't really know, right? Your conscious brain, your logical brain knows that it's not real. It's a movie, right? Yeah. Your unconscious or the other side of your brain doesn't really know. So what happens is it's like watching a horror movie, right? When it scares you, that adrenal boost that you have, right? We all get fun of, I got adrenal boost and I got scared, and it's all fun because you know you're safe, right? Your logical brain, but your body doesn't know the difference. All right. It's still producing those hormones at the same level. Now, when you add physical danger, right? So what happens is it's not a scare and it doesn't continue afterwards. Case in point, you're at your base and they're busy bombing, right? So basically, you know that all over you, and any second you could be hit by a projectile, right? Yeah. Now, that doesn't happen. It doesn't happen for 30 seconds. That can happen for hours, right? Yeah. It can go, and all depending on where you are. This is a process that could take a lot of time. Now, when you live in that situation, the entire time that's happening, your body's stiff, right? And it's pumping chemicals. It's pumping chemicals. It's trying to keep you alive. And it's the combination of the whole process of keeping doing that. And then what happens is eventually you have things like adrenal burnout. You have your cortisol levels are just messed up. And those two factors start the downward spiral, because as men, what happens is we don't want to deal with the fact that we even have emotions. We are, we want to stay away from, the amount of guys I've heard that say, no, when things get emotional, I step away, right? The most put together people I've ever spoken to are people who are able to speak about their emotions, how they feel, right? And you're not speaking about it because you're trying to, it's not a wet work session where we're all going to sit and cry together and hug each other. Yeah. That doesn't work. What it means is you're dealing with the inbound emotions that are sitting deep inside you. And with men, what happens is it comes out as anger and rage.
It does.
And generally, if you do not control that, it's going to hurt the people around you.
Oh, 100%. And I lived every word of that. And I think until I finally towed the line and just said, I'm not good.
Yeah. Honesty.
I got honest. Yeah. Like I think and I was fortunate to have met you when I did, but like I was at a place when we met, I felt like I was good. And then I quickly realized not long after, like I'm not as good as I think I am.
Yeah.
And there was like, there's been a good 2-year window for me of just like constantly evolving and bettering. And I look back, like where I am today versus where I was a year ago, 2 years ago, is just incredible transformation in my opinion. I don't know if other people would agree with me on that, but I don't care. I just see it as, okay, so you go, like you're talking about the rockets and mortars and the incoming stuff. And I have to say this to maybe help another veteran navigate this if they're struggling. Because I wasn't a shooter, in my mind, like I experienced a ton of rockets and mortars, tons.
Yeah,
I couldn't even put a number on it. I was deployed 3 times. Okay, close to a 3-year period of my life, and I think it was my second deployment in Baghdad. They had us dialed in.
Yeah,
just dialed in. But because I wasn't directly the guy on the turret or the gun, I was the intel guy supporting. Yeah. In my mind, well, it was just rockets and mortars.
Yeah.
That's what I told myself.
Because that's what you had to tell yourself in order to get the job done.
Well, no, I just looked at it as, well, I'm relatively safe.
Nope.
That's what I told myself.
I understand that, but now break it down from the outside, right? And take this back to hunting, right? Let's go back to our most innate thing that human beings did, right? You and me are with a pack of guys and we're going out to hunt a mammoth, right? Now, in that hunting pack, we're going to have the guy who's going to be right in front. He's the one who's going to do the kill shot, right? He's the one of the highest propensity of danger. Then you have the lookouts to see where the herd is. Then you have a bunch of runners who's going to break one off from the herd. And then you're going to have the person who does the kill shot, or we're going to lead them onto a cliff to fall off, right? Now, depending on your positioning, some people are more inclined to danger than others, but everybody's in danger. So what happens is, in order to do your job effectively, even the guy who's the kill shot, he's not telling himself he's in danger. He's telling himself, I'm fine. Because if he doesn't do that, if he doesn't push down those emotions, if he doesn't control himself, he cannot complete said task.
Well, I'll tell you a story, and I think the majority of professionals would probably say this isn't normal, but I didn't think of it. And I don't like to tell war stories because my stories, in my opinion, are very mild compared to most, but I just think it's a good example of showing trauma that you haven't realized. So that's the only reason I'm telling this story. So we're doing PT, and I was leading a group of guys that needed to get back in shape.
Yeah.
And we were running, and it's like I forget the name of the road even, but like it was all inside the base.
Yeah.
But we had a section of road that we would run that was basically right next to the wall, and the outside wall was the bad guys could come up to, right?
Yeah.
And there were guard towers all scattered throughout this specific spot. Well, anyway, we would run this road frequently, and then like my shift or schedule, I was running this road in the evening. I don't remember what time of the evening it was, but it was like evening, maybe let's call it 6 to 8 o'clock at night.
Yeah.
Completely dark outside, and we're running, and we hear small arms fire. And we hear small arms fire a lot at that time. Okay, it was an everyday occurrence.
Yeah.
And so you just didn't think anything of it. So I'm running with this group of guys, and I hear these small arms, and it sounded kind of close, but I'm like, whatever. We hear this stuff all the time. Yeah. And I jokingly said to these guys, hey, they're shooting at you. Let's move faster.
Yes.
And we finish our run, and we get back, and I get into the it was actually a tent that the gym was in.
Yeah.
that was barricaded with these like wall barriers around it. So if there was any kind of incoming, it would they have a lot of those HESCO barriers out there, the Jersey barriers, to try to keep, minimize on shrapnel whenever the explosions happened.
Gotcha.
So anyway, I'm inside this and we're continuing the workout, and I remember doing abs, and all of a sudden I hear, we need a medic. They're screaming for a medic. Medic, right? So I look up and I see a dude coming in. He's got blood all down his chest.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's interesting. And he's screaming for a medic. I'm not a medic, so I'm not going to go get in the way. Like, we all are trained in first aid and safety, but I'm not a medic, so I'm not going to go get in the way of something like that. So medic, of course, they're everywhere, takes off to go treat the wounded. Well, it was the guard. They had guards at every building you went into to check IDs and stuff. And so there was the guard that was there. And he got hit by a round that went right through his chest. And unfortunately, he wasn't wearing his vest. He was inside the base. He wasn't wearing the vest, but it literally went through his chest. And unfortunately, he didn't make it.
Wow.
So, this is going on, and what word was being traveled was there were enemy combatants on the base attacking. Yeah. That's what we were being told. So in my mind, when this guy gets hit, there's enemy combatants outside the tent that I'm working out in. Okay. He goes to help him. People are kind of like, well, what do we do?
Yeah.
I went back and finished my workout.
Because there's not much else you could do.
Right. And so my point is, I looked at it at that point and was like, well, I can't go fight because they don't want us to leave the building. They told us to stay where we're at.
So I might as well just finish what I'm doing. Okay. But I was just like, whatevs. Yeah.
And obviously, I didn't want the guy to pass. That's horrible. But it was happening on a daily basis. Yeah. So I go into work that night and realized the guard tower that I ran past and said, hey, they're shooting at you, was actually getting shot at. Yeah. There was the attack at that guard tower.
And you literally just missed.
Oh, those rounds were over my head. Yeah. Straight up going over my head. But I didn't fucking know. Yeah. And my point of even saying this story is that, that was a big deal that I buried. Yeah. In that situation and time, and that's just one story of many
stories
over a 3-year period of things that happened that I downplayed and justified in my head that, dude, you're good because you lived. You didn't have your limbs get blown off. You didn't, I have a friend who was in a helicopter crash. I have a friend who was in some serious shit. Mm-hmm. He tells his story about how he got pinned down in combat behind somebody and another guy saved his life in a firefight. Yeah. And I'm thinking to myself, I don't have any of that. Yeah. Who am I to say that I have a problem? Yeah. Look what he's been through. Look what these guys have been through. And my whole point of even bringing all this stuff up to use this comparison is I know there's veterans out there right now that are in the same place that I was in that just didn't want to address it. And to share more of my story years later, when all this stuff would come to the surface, I didn't know what was happening.
Yes. You didn't know why.
I didn't know why. I had the brain fog. I had the anger. I would snap over any little thing, right? I couldn't ever figure out, what was this that's bothering me?
Because you shove that all down, right? Because
you bury it.
Because part of you burying it is, as you say, is there's a guilt factor in there. Well, I came out okay, right? And, there's the other factor of, I'm a man, I must deal with this shit. Right? We all do that. All of us do that. And, to relay back is, again, what Kevin's talking about is, I'd say on the one extreme, I'll give another extreme and give my version on that, right? So when we stayed in South Africa, and right now what's happening is President Trump has allowed a refugee program for white South Africans to come to the United States, right? And as he explains it, why is this different from other countries? Is because there's 147 race-based laws specifically against minorities in South Africa, of which the minorities majorly targeted is white South Africans. Mm-hmm. And slowly but surely through those race-based laws is creating a genocide. Not the general genocide as we know in the Holocaust, but it's a genocide on a slow aspect. It's a slow burn, right? And it's degrading them. So he's bringing them over. Now, to give context on that, when you watch 55 South Africans come for the first time a couple of days ago and land in the United States, and not one of them is flying a South African flag. Every single one of them is flying a U.S. flag.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Because like me, I am proud to be in the United States, and I want to make this country as great as possible by bringing whatever skill sets I have forward. Yeah. And when I remember being in South Africa, right, I'm going to give a couple of context and stories. So South Africa has the highest rape rate in the world.
Rape
rape, right? So if you're a woman, like my wife in South Africa, your chances of being raped is 1 in 3.
That's fucking crazy.
Right? It's insane. Now, on top of that that's only what is reported, right? So you must know it's probably way worse than that. So, imagine my wife's feeling like going anywhere, doing anything. Like if I left the house for more than 5 minutes, she'd be on a call. Where are you? What's going on? Because she's either alone at home, or she's worried that something's happening to me, right? And a couple of things that happened to us. So we stayed in a house in Durban, Mshlanga, Durban, and they were breaking into houses all around us, right? And it was a gang of guys that break into the houses, and they'd literally hold them hostage. Sometimes they'd rape the woman. There's some horrible stories from South Africa, right? So we're staying in this house. We're very vigilant, so we've got a pit bull. For whatever reason, we decided to buy a paintball gun, which is, in South Africa, if you shoot someone at the house like California, you're in trouble. They're not, despite the fact that they're on your property. And we, by a hair's breadth, through that dog, missed these guys breaking into our house. Right? They tried to get through the windows. The pit bull kept them at bay, right? And I think about 2 o'clock in the morning, as he woke us up, we watched them across the wall, and I let the paintball gun go, right?
Nice.
And just that experience. Now think about that. We were this close from people going, I don't know what they're going to do. If you read the stories of housebreaking in South Africa, they are horrific. They're horrific, right? That's one story, right? The other stories we have
after that event, like you just went back to bed.
Yeah, and this is the point, right? So further than that is, now imagine this: you're in the United States or any first world country, right? Yeah. We phone the police. The first time they don't answer the phone. The second time there's a police station, literally maybe 600 feet from the house. They tell us, no, we don't have a vehicle. We're not coming. We phone the next police station. They tell us to phone another one. We phone them. The woman hears that my wife, right, is white, puts the phone down in her ear. We phone a 5th time, right? 4, 5, 6 times going, they're not coming out. They came and took fingerprints from that break-in 5 days after it, right? And then told us we were lying about it.
Of course.
Right, because this is the reality of living in South Africa. There is no safety. There's no one coming.
And what race were the cops that came out?
They were black Africans, right? Because what happens is, it's not a race thing. It's perpetual race baiting through a government system, the same as they've been doing in the United States for the last 8 years, which is trying to make race the primary issue to keep control. The primary problem here is you need a law enforcement that actually does their job, and it should not discriminate against anybody regardless of gender, race. It doesn't really matter. But police force is key.
To try not to deviate too far away from our topic, how often would occurrences like this happen?
So, and that's where I was getting to next. So our entire time in South Africa, you drive, you are looking for someone to hijack you. I worked for a company that literally used to go recover cars from hijackings. You are waiting for yourself to get shot. You are looking. You keep a space in front of the car behind you, right in front of you, right? You make sure there's space behind you. If a car comes too close before, you get out of the way. You are completely on edge, and I can relate it to, especially for someone like you staying on a base. Regardless that you're on a base, you're always looking off your shoulder.
Oh yeah.
So that's how you live life.
Bro, I walked through one of my deployments. I forget which one this one was. I think it was the second one. I had to walk by the Iraqi compound at midnight every single night. Yeah. By myself in the dark.
Yeah.
You know how many times I would think, like, I literally look over my shoulder, thinking, like, dude, these dudes, like, they could be casing me. They know that I walked through here. They could scoop me up at any time.
100%.
Every single night I had to walk by that compound. No one's finding you. The only way to get back to where I had to sleep was by that compound, and I just was like, well, we'll see. Yeah, and you kind of hold your breath and you go, right? So that was our life in South Africa. Now, when you speak to people in South Africa and you explain that to them, they think you're nuts. A lot of them are on the same page as us. Those are the guys coming over. But when you speak to them, because they're in the shit, they do not relate to it. Oh, it's not that bad. No, because, and this is the point I'm getting at. So what we were told a lot of times, especially when we went to Canada and we were relaying what happened to us, right? This is what. So I'm going to give 3 stories. The first one is, we were at an event, right? It's a lot of people in an event. It was a festival. And my wife put her cell phone down like this, like that. And she turned her head. She came back and someone stole it. So we went to the police and we reported it. Their answer was, it's your fault for putting it down. This was Canada or South Africa?
It was South Africa.
South Africa.
Right. So in South Africa, so imagine this. It was your fault for putting it down. Right. Then now we're in Canada. Now we're relaying our story for our case in Canada. And my wife talks about the fact that she fears for her life and fears getting raped. And they go, but you weren't raped. Okay, so I have to be raped in order to be scared of the fact that it could happen. So that's the mentality you're thrown with, right? So, when you have kind of things pushing against you, think from a mental standpoint, right? So like I've said before in previous podcasts, when we arrived in Canada and then eventually in the United States, like Canada was a nice precursor to the US, right? Canada has its own problems. Yeah. But when we arrived there, it's that thing. And now all of a sudden we're out of that danger. We're like, oh my God. And then you start recalibrating. I mean, I've got so many bad stories of things that happened that we recounted in other podcasts that I just shoved down and I never went out. And I didn't realize how much, as you said, you just shove it down and it comes out in anger and rage. Yeah. And you have these trigger points that just lie out. And what's the moral of that? Like yours, like mine, it doesn't have to be those extreme circumstances. Right. It could be, as we said, it could be small things happening. But I feel your emotional resilience and your mental wellness is being able to sit back and be able to be emotional mostly with yourself. Yeah. And sit there and go, you know what, I've been through some shit and it messed me up.
Well, let's use this. Let's you and I have some pretty big deals, right, in our story. Let's use it for the person that doesn't have that.
Yes.
Let's talk about that for a second. And I'll use one a conversation I just had with a guy. Parents were separated.
Yeah.
Divorced. All right. And then I feel like religion plays a lot into people's lives too.
True.
All right. So you get raised. I was raised with religion. You get raised in an environment of religion with harsh, difficult parents. There's pressure around that.
Yeah. And expectation, right?
Expectation. Okay. So you have to perform at a young age. But let's use the divorce situation. Let's use a pressure-filled religious environment. Parents are still together. Parents were separated over here. Two very different things that both create trauma in your life.
Yes.
That create hardships for you at a later point in time.
Yeah.
With things that are going to come to the surface that you're going to one day go, why am I doing that?
Yeah.
Where does that stem from? And then you really start to evaluate. And if you truly sit into the moment and start to identify things, you go, wait a second. That is my dad coming out at me. Wait a second.
Unpack it.
That is my mom.
Yeah, that is so on point.
But it doesn't have to be this like I got blown up, or in your case, fear for rape, or the extreme environments that you come from. We could go really simple.
Yeah.
And we could talk about a coach that you may have had that just rode your ass for a year.
Yes.
I had a coach that actually, not that this specific didn't necessarily create anything, but I was that age of puberty where I was starting to need to shave, but it wasn't quite there. And my dad was like, nah, son, just hold off. There's no reason to start shaving. But the coach kept saying, you got to shave, you got to shave, you got to and rode me. Like, what's so far as that my dad had to get involved and tell the dude to knock it off because the guy thought I had to shave.
And that affected you as a person. And it affected you as you grew.
Yeah, and that guy was in my life for a period of time. And this won't give him away because it's a very common name. Is Mr. Wilson. And he just, for whatever reason, was out after me constantly. Well, I was a smart ass type kid and would go right back at him and cause some shit.
Which is like, you know what you're bringing up is actually very important, right? Because this is really where it matters with men, right? Because the big traumatic event you've had, if you're ex-military, you know what it is. Yep. If you mindset and you were in a third world country and you had these massive problems, you try to live through them. I know what they are, right? Yep. But realistically, you talked about the parent dynamic, right? And this is something I went through with my parents. Is no matter how good intent your parents have, because I don't think there's there's not a lot of parents who don't have the best well wishes for the kids, right? But when you get to a point and you realize that your parents were themselves human beings, and when they had you, most of them were kids, right? And then you start putting yourself from an empathy standpoint in their shoes, and you go, you know what, I get this. And now, for me, what happened was I can have a conversation with my parents, and I can say to them, you know what, these things that you guys did, right, they really fucked me up, right? And when I say fucked me up, I don't mean like it messed me up. I turned out fine. And then before you have that conversation, you go, there's a sense of guilt because you go, but I'm okay. Yeah. I'm all right. I'm doing fine, right? You kind of tell yourself these things, but realistically, if we're really honest, right, yes, I'm okay. But that doesn't mean that those small things that happen in your life, it could be a bully in school, right? It could have been a traumatic event that just embarrassed you, right, as a child, which everybody's had.
Yeah.
And what happens is when you have these events, you don't always count because you're told, just suck it up, you'll be okay. But no one gives you parents don't really have most people don't have the mechanism to teach you how to deal with trauma.
Right.
Right, which is why where the
100%.
work comes in, right? So it doesn't matter what the event is. We all have trauma.
Yeah.
Right. And some of those traumas carry with us. Actually, I'd go as far as to say they all do.
I use me, okay? I as an adult became this like highly critical person. Like highly critical of everything. Negative towards performance, as whether it be in business or as my personal relationships, okay? Anyway, breaking free from that, I had to look at, well, what made me that way?
Yeah.
All right, well, let's break that down. I said already, I was in a highly pressure environment with religion.
Yep.
I had parents that I was constantly trying to please.
Yep.
Okay, let's table them, though. Let's just look at sports.
Yeah.
And let's say I played baseball at a high level, so I always had coaches that were always, and baseball's a game of failure. They're always telling you how bad you sucked.
Yep.
Okay? Not a whole lot of how good you were, how bad you were.
Yeah.
Like, call home, you went 3 for 4, what'd you do on that out? Talk to your coach. Like, it was always like, negative feedback. Okay. Yeah. So you're constantly being criticized. Then I went to the military. Guess what happens there? Same stuff.
Thing.
Same stuff, right? And then I go to corporate. And then for 8 years in the corporate world, I was told everywhere I sucked so that I could be better.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, what does that do to you? You bring that shit home.
It breaks you down, man.
You bring it home. And whether we want to admit this or not, like, here's what I've said this, like, and I know we're not a career advice type podcast, but like, let's use a resume as an example. If I give a resume to 100 people, I'm going to get 100 different opinions.
Yes.
Which one's right?
None and all.
Doesn't fucking matter.
None and all. Like, it doesn't matter.
It's no different than a manager, right? And this really came to light for me whenever I was in the corporate world, where I had one boss that loved me, and I had another boss that told me everything. I was being told this was to make me better.
Yes.
But was constantly giving criticism.
Yeah.
Where I needed to be better and what I'm not very good at. And I actually told that boss one time, I was like, well, I don't agree with you because you operate one way and I operate a different way.
Yeah.
Who is right and who is wrong?
Yeah.
So my whole point of even saying any of this stuff is like, everybody has an opinion. Who fucking cares?
Yeah.
You got to do you to the best of your abilities. And when some of these things start to come to the surface, like criticism, and somebody calls you on it, figure out why you're like that.
Yes.
Dive into
why do you react that way?
Right.
And I think the next step that I want to go to is I want to give some of the tools we've both used on how to deal with this, right? So again, let's break this down. Every single one of us are carrying trauma. Can I just
quickly say, I think you have to be curious, though, to fix this.
You have to want to be better, and you have to be willing to dig into yourself.
You do. Like, if you don't have this pursuit of wanting to be better, you're never going to change. You're never going to fix it. You have to be curious to fix it.
And if you have this idea that you're okay and you can deal with everything, trust me, you can. We can all deal with it, but when you immediately just say to yourself, I'm okay, right? Yeah. What you're doing is you're blocking yourself off from diving into it. And the most amazing thing is especially when you do an NLP and hypnosis session, right? You go in there and you think you have it figured out. You write your little paperwork and you say, this is everything. And you start doing the session. And as you go through the guided meditation, then all of a sudden you realize, oh my God, what I thought was the triggers are not what I at all thought.
Yeah.
And we've done guided meditation on that. I've done a lot of personal introspection work, as you have. And I want to give some fundamental tools of things that you need to do to be able to deal with this. So the first layer is, no matter how well put together you think you are, right? Now, I'm saying this very openly. It doesn't mean this in no way, shape, or form makes you a bad person, but we all have trauma.
Oh yeah.
Our traumas can be as simple as something that happened in our childhood that other people will not think is traumatic, but it affected us traumatically.
And just quickly to that point, when I did NLP and hypnosis, I identified things that I completely forgot about and buried.
You see what I mean?
Completely forgot about and buried.
Yeah. So, those things come up, right? So we're talking about just average, normal life, your parents, and all parents' intent is good for their child. Yep. They're human beings. They're enacting what they feel is the best. But no matter how good they think they're doing, there's going to be something they do that just hits you as a child. That's just the natural progression of that. So I feel, regardless of whether you've been through, military action like you, me going through coming from a third world country and having all these massive issues, I think the fundamental thing you have to first say to yourself, if you want to be better, right? If you want to be a better human being, the first thing you've got to do is sit down and go, no matter how well together I think I am, I will always have to work on my triggers and my traumas, because no matter how good I think I am, it's a constant work. I'm testament to this, so are you. It's consistent. It doesn't stop, but it does make life better.
I will say, like, one of the things I'm working really hard with now is I'm trying to like just bring peace to my home, okay? And children, ours are young, right? 8, 6, and 4. And a trigger for me, like, my girls are my world.
Yeah.
Don't hurt my girls. My son right now has, like, we're teaching our kids like fighting skills,
which is good,
and they like to use them on each other for whatever reason.
Sounds about right.
We're fighting that fight, if you will. But one of the things that really gets to me is when my son hits them or kicks them, and it's a trigger for me, because like I want to defend, right? And so I'm working really hard about just like teaching him.
Yeah.
But my whole point of even bringing that up is to say, you're still going to have triggers.
Of course.
It doesn't go when you start doing these deep work. But now you're going to develop tools, though.
Yes.
To help you. I actually told this guy yesterday, I'm still me. I'm still human.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm still highly competitive.
Yep.
I'm still a man, if you will, what I would like to believe an elite man who is not afraid to kill if I had to kill.
Yes.
I don't know if that's the way to say that, but anyway, I am going to mess up.
Yes.
In my relationships.
Yes.
Ownership is key.
Yeah.
But the tools that I have to recover faster are what's important. Nothing is going to just completely eliminate.
No.
I think another thing, and I don't want to forget this because I really want to say this. You mentioned your parents earlier.
Yeah.
A really healing thing to do, and I found tons of healing with us and my parents in that relationship, is to say stuff like this. And I feel like you've done this too. And I'll use my dad. Hey, Dad, I really appreciate all the things that you did for me, but I'm going through some stuff. This is what I'm kind of unpacking.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to make you aware of this.
Yes.
I don't blame you. I don't fault you. I know you were doing everything you possibly could.
Yeah.
But this is what I'm experiencing as a result of that. I just wanted you to know that.
Yeah.
But you're still a great dad. I still care about you.
That approach is perfect. And listen, you might hit that approach. And again, remember, parents are people too.
Yeah.
They're on their own personal journey. And you might say that and they may have a defensive reaction to it, right? Because they don't want to deal with the fact that they may have messed up, right? And as you said, you're still a great dad. I had the same conversation with mine. I was like, you know what? When these fundamental things that you did when you were a kid were great, but there was these things that you did that just, they didn't resonate with me. When you did this, it made me feel like less of a person. Mm-hmm. And I don't blame you for it. I understand. And the best part of having that conversation is when you take, as an adult now, and you bring your dad back to when he was raising you, right? Especially with you with young kids. And you realize that he was doing the best he can, and no one's questioning this. Yeah. But what we're talking about is we're talking about the process, because what's beautiful with parents, I've had that with my parents, I'm sure you've had that with your dad, as you just explained, is you go through this process of having this open-ended conversation as adults, loving conversation with your parents, where they acknowledge, you know what, we did the best we can, but we messed up a lot. And that is important.
Bro,
right?
it's healing, I think, for both parties.
Man, that acknowledgement, because whether they admit it or not, deep down they know.
Yeah,
right? They're people, of course they know. But when you can lay down there and you still show that love and that empathy for them, and you show an understanding of what they went through when they were younger, man, it changes the relationship.
It really does. And I think like I grew up in extreme religion, right? And there's a big part of me that thinks that my parents probably still believe in the way they raised us. It was the right way to raise us. Okay, and that's okay. That's their opinion.
Yeah.
I have a disdain for organized religion. I don't like it. I have a faith with God and Jesus, but I don't like religion. Yeah. And I feel like a lot of human beings misinterpret the
relationship
Bible or the relationship with God. And so for me, I didn't agree with the way I was raised at this point in my life. I don't but that doesn't mean I couldn't do anything to change that. I couldn't do anything to go back in time to be like, oh no, don't do this.
And you appreciate all the good things at the same time.
Yeah, I was in a safe environment. I still was in a loving home, but there were things that I would constantly be like, why is that? I don't know, whatever.
this is the start of healing, right? When you have trauma, is being able to look at your past, right? And let's say you've had a really bad, there's people who've had bad experiences with parents, right?
Yeah.
Like bad relationship.
For sure.
What you want to do when you go through that is, the first thing you want to do is you want to forgive them and you want to forgive yourself. You have to start with forgiveness, right?
Yeah, I forget who was talking about this recently. I want to say it was on a Sean Ryan podcast where they talked about unforgiveness and how lethal that is to us. Because so if I've had a wrongdoing towards me and I can't forgive, and I hold unforgiveness in my heart, it is a silent killer.
Yeah, it destroys you. Your whole system goes in. So start with that forgiveness, and then try and put yourself in their shoes, right? And let's say you have a bad disconnect in the relationship, right? Now, I know a lot of people who have this. Even if you have a bad disconnect, if you can empathetically put yourself in their shoes, doesn't mean you condone some of the actions, right? Like this bad actions, but put yourself in the shoes and go, you know what, that happened. And then try and look at the good, try and look at the bad and say, right, where are we? Because that gives you perspective. Yeah. And then for me, if those are the way you're starting out, that's a good place. And I think the next step for a man is there's a saying by a few people. We've had it on a previous podcast, but most people cannot spend 20 minutes alone with themselves in silence. Right now, I've been giving this advice to a lot of people. I follow this advice. I'm sure you do it a lot of times, because I'm very happy being quiet and alone, because then I can actually process in a way that allows me to make really good decisions and put things into perspective, right? So generally what happens is, if you sit alone, and I mean, when I say alone, no music playing in your ears. No phone, no distractions. You could be on a walk, you could be sitting in a room, you could be sitting by the pool, it doesn't really matter. And when you sit there, the first 15 to 20 minutes, you're just going to have firing shots. Your brain's going to be doing this and going all over the place, because that's the world we live in. Our world is just constant triggers all the time. Then what happens is, after about 15 to 20 minutes, your brain goes and it calms down. Yeah. Unknown fact that a lot of people don't know is, if you are in a bad state, like if you're having an argument with your wife, or you're upset about something, it takes your body about 20 minutes to calm down. Regardless of how you feel, I'm calm, you're not calm. It takes 20 minutes. Right? So you calm everything down. So now, after that first 20 minutes, now your brain calms down. Then what happens is, if you stay in the silence, what will start happening is you'll start realigning your thoughts, because men are logical, so everything starts realigning. And then you start having an honest conversation with yourself. Right? That conversation, if you are struggling with something, will bring you the answer. And if you can do that for an hour, you will be surprised at what clarity you hit at the end of that. And that's one of the fundamentals. And then there's multiple tools you can have. The next one is forgive yourself, regardless of how bad. Like,
it's big.
Most people don't like who they are, right? And the reason you don't like is because we have a projected perception of self. Right? That projected perception of self, sometimes, if we're talking about fitness, it could be body dysmorphia, right? If we're talking about jobs and careers, it could be dysmorphia in my positioning, right? Basically, we have a self-perception of what we put in. It's I like to call it the Facebook theory, right? So the picture and image presented on Facebook, Instagram, is not really you. It's the best version you want people to see, right? Then there's the real you. There's the person who wakes up with, crusty eyes, who has certain habits that they like, that they don't like. It's the day-to-day version of yourself. Once you sit down and you actually know who that person is, and here's the real kicker, and we've seen this with a lot of people we've worked with. Sometimes what happens is those people don't want to see the bad. All they're focusing on is, I'm going to do these things, and in 6 months, I'm going to be the person I want to be. You're never going to be the person you want to be.
Never.
Right? You are the person you want to be today. What you've got to do is you have to forgive yourself. You have to take a step back, and you know what? Good or bad, I will take everything in. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to move forward being the best version of myself on a daily basis.
I'll give an example of this where, using myself again, people that come into my life now see me as this guy that works out and fit and in shape and whatever, but they didn't know me when I was 50 pounds overweight. And when I say I was 50 pounds overweight, they go, what? And at that particular time, like I did not like that guy that was 50 pounds overweight. I wasn't happy about that guy. But let me tell you something. If I wasn't that guy at some point in my life, how could I help the people that I help today?
100%.
I have to have that. It sucks to think about what I was. But at the same time, I'm grateful. I have to have gratitude for that, because if I didn't go through those things, I couldn't look at somebody like one of the guys we're helping right now with authority to be able to actually help him and give him the kind of love that he needs to break out and break free of those chains. I couldn't do that without where I was.
Yeah, and it's as we said before, is you have to start in the darkness to get to the light. Mm-hmm. Growth only happens in adversity, and as much as those bad times are bad, once you break through that and you accept the good and the bad, right, and then you start making fundamental changes. You start with affirmations. The affirmations as you start in the morning is do not negatively complain, right? This is, I say this to people, and I know sometimes it sounds like hippie, airy, fairy shit, but listen to me.
When you get it, it doesn't.
Your brain and your unconscious mind does not know the difference, right? When you're saying something. So you can go, oh, but I didn't mean it. No, you did. Else, why would you say it?
Yeah.
When you talk, you need to express with your words, with your actions, with your body language, what you want to be in the world, right?
Well, you taught me the difference between all good versus no worries.
Yes.
Right? And just, I'm in such a habit now of, I rarely say no worries because I'm in such a habit of saying all good.
Yeah.
It's negative versus positive.
Right. And as much as you go, oh, well, no worries is a common term. Yes, but do you know what that term does? It's got two negative words.
Right. Or like I actually shared this conversation with Sam not that long ago about the military folks in the veteran world or even the government community would say, oh, man, I'm just living the dream. Well, that's a negative connotation.
It's a negative connotation, and they're doing it to almost being sarcastic about where they are.
They're 100% being sarcastic about it.
Now, regardless of where you are, I don't care what level you are. What you have to start doing is you have to start first, right? First and foremost, you have to have that quiet conversation with yourself, and then you have to be honest with yourself about where you are, and then in that moment, be grateful.
Yes, gratitude is massive.
Gratitude is massive. Be grateful.
Totally.
Once you can exude gratitude, right? I've heard people talk about toxic positivity. Right. Now, let me explain, in my perception, what toxic positivity is. It's someone who has this, everyone must be positive and runs around. I can tell you the person doing that is probably going through a lot of things. Right. It's also probably not real, right? Because it's not about everyone else. If you see someone doing toxic positivity, it's because they're trying to present something that is not their true self on someone else. So that's why it assumes toxic, because they're not being true to themselves.
Right.
Are they truly positive, or are they trying to exude it on everybody because someone told them this is the right way to do something?
Right.
It's not about other people, right? The change in the world you want to see is not about everyone else. Right? The amount of times that I watch people, it's one of the most interesting things where I see this is I'll watch Charlie Kirk, right? Now, the one thing I really appreciate with Charlie Kirk, I don't agree with everything he says, right? But one thing I really appreciate with him is that he goes into these adverse situations and wants to have an open-ended discussion, right? And he wants to talk about various aspects. And every now and then he'll get a philosophy student or a student studying a certain thing. And that person who's maybe 21, 20 years old, in their mind, they've solved the world. The world's crisis is solved, right? We just have to be communist or socialist. We just have to do this or we've got to do that. And because they haven't actually lived in the real world, right? They have a very skewed perception. Now, when you put yourself in the shoes, and what I like about that is, why is that important? Is because you're not here to solve the world's problems.
Right.
You do not have the capacity. If you want the world to be a better place, you need to do that in you. You need to exude. If you expect other people to put their shopping cart away, put yours away. If you expect people to pick up their trash, pick your trash up. It's not about what other people do. It's about what you do.
I think this is a fresh topic too, but I think as men, we have the opportunity to lead the world around us by leading by example.
100%.
Right? If I go, like you just the shopping cart example, you know how many times I'll look at somebody that's just finishing up as I'm walking in the store and say, hey, I'll take that for you.
Yeah.
And it's just a nice gesture.
It's a good way to start.
Yeah, it's just a nice gesture. Like, hey, I got you. I'll take that for you. Because you know what?
Yes.
Especially if the person I see is struggling to walk.
Yeah.
Or they got kids. Or that's one of my favorites. Like a mom putting in the kids in the car and I'll say, hey, I got your card for you.
Yeah. Or it could just be the general guy getting into his car and go, hey, buddy, I need that. Let me go put that away. I'm on my way in. These are the things that you want to live, right? Because when you start living it and you stop expecting the world to be better and you start making the world better by
your actions in the world around you,
you are automatically a better person. 100%. So that's the next thing that I say is what you've got to do is when you speak to people, right? And we interact with a lot of people on a weekly basis, right? And when someone speaks to you, there's generally two types. There's multiple levels of people, but I'm going to focus on two types. There's one person who go, hey, how you doing? They go, you know what? life's good. I'm pushing for this. I'm going, everything they're saying is exuding this positivity about how they're trying to conduct their day.
Yeah.
Then the second type of person go, it's good, but, and then they start with this negative triad of how the world is just shitting on their head.
The black cloud, man.
Now the thing is,
fucking black cloud.
That black cloud that you carry with you, that energy, right? As much as we don't want to believe it, that energy you pull back to you, right? You will attract what you put out there, right? So you want to start with your energy, and in the beginning, if you're not feeling it, right, fake it till you make it, right? But you're not faking it to make other people believe it. You're faking it to make you believe it. So say the affirmations. Get up in the morning. It sounds stupid. Look in the mirror and go, I love myself. I am worth it. I am good. I am going to make the best of this day. Today, I'm going to kill this day. I'm going to make everything out of it. I am going to kill it. This is me. I'm ready to go. Because if you do that on a constant basis, and eventually what will happen is your nervous system believes it, your brain believes it, your consciousness believes it, your soul believes it, and eventually you become the person that you want to be. And you have to start doing that by taking consistent actions every day.
Right.
And in doing that, you have to be honest about your strengths, your weaknesses, your traumas, what's happened to you, so that when you interact with people and you get upset about something, you can figure out why you're getting upset.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, I think another layer to that is receiving feedback from those closest to you.
Yes.
Without being offended by it. And I was horrible at this for a really long time, and I'm still working to be better about it. And it's because of the corporate and sports world plus family, growing up, I would be sensitive to feedback because I constantly got told where I sucked. And so it just became this pressure point for me, or a trigger, right? And so when it came to my spouse giving me feedback, I would really overreact and not handle it very well. So you have to really be willing to listen to what people have to say that you care about, and create a space for them to provide you feedback without repercussion, without them having and this is me, all of these lessons that I share is because I learned all this shit the fucking hard way.
Yeah, you went through this.
I went through all of this. So I'm telling you this stuff based on a place of do as I say, not as I did, because all the things I did, I fucked all this up. Yeah. All this.
How I usually look at it, especially when it comes to criticism, right? So I used to take criticism very badly from my wife, right? Same as you just mentioned. And the reason I did this is why I took it badly, right? Because when she gave me the criticism, I was so overly focused. And here's what it really is. Most of the time when we have a defensive reaction, it's not based on what the person's saying. It's based on us creating a scenario where we believe it's something more than it is. So if my wife comes to me and says, listen, you did this and I don't like it, right? If I'm starting to get defensive, it's because something in that I did, right? Yeah. I know I don't like it. I don't want to deal with it. And she's calling me on it. I don't like that you're calling me on it, right? But once you let go of that, and I like giving people this advice, because I deal with people on many bases and say, you know what, this person said this, and I've said this for years, and I'll continue saying it. Criticism is a wonderful thing, right? It's because it allows you to dig in. But here's where it comes down. There's criticism from people, right, which I would call haters, which you will always get. Yeah. And haters could be close friends and family. Definitely. Right? Because no one will derail your dreams as quickly as friends and family. The reason they're doing it is because they haven't done the self-work on themselves. Yeah. So you trying to chase your dreams or make a success of something, they will always find a negative aspect to it because they're afraid of making those changes in their own lives. Yeah. Never ever take criticism from people you wouldn't take advice from, right? It's probably the most fundamental thing I can say in criticism. However, when we're talking about a spouse, right, your wife, my wife is the yin to my yang. She is my solar soulmate, the person I spend every waking. I spend the moment with. She knows every personal aspect of me, right? When she gives me advice, it is almost disrespectful to get upset with it. Right, have a conversation, and this is a working thing for me. It's not as if I'd figure this figured out. Yeah, sure. And you have to consistently work on it to realize that there's certain people in your life. I'm very lucky, as I feel you are. I've got you in my life. I've got my wife. I've got a group of really well put together human beings. When they tell me something and they give me criticism, I open my ears and go, okay, because now I'm getting feedback from people I would take advice from, that I trust on a fundamental level.
Yeah, it's like I've heard this example, and this is a very basic way to explain it. if your parents aren't millionaires and they weren't very good with money and they just didn't have a grasp on what you have to do to become a millionaire, would you take money advice from them?
Yeah.
No, because they're not where you want to be financially. Yes. That's not the life that you're trying to live financially. So you're going to seek out the millionaire that's done what you've wanted to accomplish and listen to that person. So you have to be cautious about like where you get that source of information from, because sometimes those that are closest to us, they're being so cautious about, I feel like this happens a lot with parents and money. They don't want you to take that financial risk because of what could happen. Yeah. And because that's not something they ever did, right? Yeah. And so they look at it as like, well, I just don't want my baby to be hurt, or whatever they want to say. Yeah. And I think sometimes in our relationships, when it comes to like feedback to the ones that love us, our spouses specifically, I think, let me say it like this, actually. I think what changed things for me was when I started to do better about recognizing she is who she is. Yes. I can't really change her.
Accepting her for who she is.
Correct. And I was bad about this, because if she would do things that I didn't approve of or wouldn't do let's not say that. If I wouldn't do something and I didn't agree with what she would do, I would let her know that as a quote parent. Yes. But she's her own person.
Yeah, and she's not your kid, and she's not
my kid.
And you really don't have any control over her.
I don't. And so I either choose to love her for who she is. Yeah. And yes, we both are going to try to be better versions of ourselves, but when I stopped trying to like, and again, I'm still learning, but like when I started to do a better job of trying not to like to just basically stop trying to control what she would say and do and act and how she would be, I just like love her for who she is. And like there's been improvements. There's been a lot of improvements from that. And again, I don't like I don't know how to do all the right things. I'm working hard on a lot of stuff. I think something, just kind of spitting some marriage advice out here, like one of the things that I would get defensive sometimes, where if I forgot to do something, maybe like this is a really basic one, and not like she would like rip me up for this, but if I forget to get something at the store, maybe I got defensive about, I got so much on my plate, and I would just, why do you always jump my ass or something? Versus today, I would go, I did forget that. I'm terrible with that. I didn't write it down.
Take accountability.
I'll go back right now and get it.
I'll go and I'll resolve the problem.
Yeah, well, this just happened, I think, the other day. I was like, I'll go get it right now. I was like, I know you need that. She said, it's fine. Just get it tomorrow. Yeah. Very different than if I created an argument. Yes. Right.
And it's the control factor you have to go. And we're talking about it in relationship with the spouses, because that's the person you're going to spend the most time with. But it relates back to any relationship. Is what I've been trying to work on in my marriage, and this goes back down to knowing yourself and what your triggers are, right? Is my wife would, when she would say something, and this is the advice I'm going to give to a lot of people, I've followed it now, and honestly it works really well, is as men, what happens is sometimes we listen to respond instead of just listen, right? And I'm guilty as hell of this.
Yeah, and we fuck this up as men so much where we think we have to respond, we have to fix, and all I wanted is just, and I'm working on this so much, but like just hearing them and not offering a solution. Yeah, and men, we got to be better at that, because we just aren't good at it.
It's something I'm working on, right? And you know, I'm gonna get a bit of profanity in here, but it's shut the fuck up, right? Like at some point going in, because especially when it comes down is, let's not just talk about criticism.
You almost want to put a little note right there that says shut the fuck up and listen.
And how I've interpreted this, right? And we went through quite a lengthy process of getting down to this point, right? Is because as we would get into an argument, especially when we're talking about difficult subjects, right? Especially if I don't agree, or there's a disagreement, or there's a disconnect for whatever reason, right? What I would start to do is I would start to get into defense fight mode, right? I'm ready to throw down, right? So I'm listening to her to respond to her. Right. I'm not listening. I'm listening to try and find, you said this one thing, and then hook on that so I can hit back as hard as possible. Right? And I'm super guilty of this. And I realized and listen to what she says. So part of the reason I would do that is an insecurity. Right? All men are insecure. So in that insecurity, what would happen is she would point something out. My insecurity, and let's say I didn't do something I was supposed to do, or I'm lacking in something that I should be doing, right? My insecurity immediately goes to, well, you know, then she doesn't love me, she doesn't accept me for who I am, she doesn't like who I am. Bullshit. What happened was if my wife, right, at any point on there, assumed that what I did was done with malice, she wouldn't be with me.
I agree.
She knows my intentions are good. She also realizes that through those intentions, I might do things in a way, right? And the intention might have been good, but the outcome didn't work out.
Yeah.
When she brings it up, I have to be confident enough and not insecure in myself to be able to go, you know what? She knows it wasn't deliberate, but this hurt her. I need to listen to why it hurt her. I need to take those feelings in. I need to understand that. And now this doesn't just go for your spouse.
Yeah.
Don't get triggered by everything. And listen, I'm going through this right now and I'm trying to keep those in check because you've got that, my wife calls it the little 7-year-old that wants to throw a tantrum. And in men, it comes up all the time.
Yeah.
You've got to get yourself into that moment. Stop being insecure. Insecurity is the biggest killer of men.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Get that insecurity under control and realize you are talking to a very... And here's the thing. It could be you as one of my best friends saying this to me. If I'm secure in my friendship with you, and I know you know me on a very deep level, what you're saying to me, even if I don't like to hear it, I know is coming from someone who wants the best for me.
Well, let's call it what it is. It's coming from a place of love.
Yeah. And when this is coming from your spouse, that doubles by 10.
Yes.
Right. So shut the fuck up.
Yes.
And listen.
Yeah.
Right.
I have a mentor that he likes to say it this way. What I'm hearing you say is, and repeat back what they've said to you in your words, basically. And I think that's a helpful tool to help you listen. So instead of listening to respond, and I have not done this well, I'm just kind of thinking of this. But basically what I'm hearing you say is, and then repeat it back, right? Because I think that's a good tool. I do want to kind of come back into this place. When we're talking relationships right now, and I want to tie this all into mental wellness because I think there's a component of this that really played out in my life that's very, very shareable that I can tell. And a guy that I just had a conversation with that has a young family, let's just say it like that, and he's early on in the childhood journey. Men, there's a book called, I think it's like The Warrior, The Magician, something else. I forget the whole name of the book.
Yeah.
But anyway, it talks about men... Like the natives had a ceremony with boys to cross over to manhood.
Yes.
They would bury the boy.
Most cultures do.
Yeah. And in the U.S., that's not necessarily something we do. But like the whole idea is that a lot of times our behaviors as we age and we grow in marriage and life and whatever else, we have a family, we have jobs, we have responsibilities, we have bills, we have all this stuff.
Yeah.
And we never actually crossed that rite of passage of boyhood to manhood.
No. There's no...
We never bury that old kid.
Yeah.
Right?
You know what it is? The word you use there is very important, that burying of the old kid. Because what happens is you kind of think, oh, yeah, but you just transgress. You go to high school, you start working. But what happens is there's never that ceremony, right? Whether it be a bar mitzvah as they do in Jewish culture or various cultures has this.
They have ceremonies.
Right. That ceremony is kind of important because it almost does a mind switch, right? And again, thinking it from a religious side, you're like, oh, no, that's stupid. No, it's not.
No, it's not.
Right? And it could be as simple in a family dynamic of sitting down with your son, right? Or maybe taking him on a little vacation with just the men. You sit down and you go, and you have that conversation. You go, you are now a man.
Well, let me give it, like, I'm trying to think of like a really basic example without getting too personal, but like, If you're choosing to go to the bar over your family, if you're choosing to play a video game over a time with your wife, those are boyhood activities.
Yes.
Okay, that's not being a man in my eyes. To me, like, and I think everybody knows, like, we don't drink, but that's not about drinking. It's about the idea that where do you prioritize things? So to me, if I prioritize the bar over fitness even,
then you have a problem.
Well, not only do you have a problem, but you're still acting as a child.
Yeah, and when I say problem is, what happens is we always talk about discipline, right? Here's the thing. I want to spend a lot of time with my wife, but as a man, what happens is men also need time alone, and you need that time to kind of reassess because we work slightly differently. However, my wife needs me to be present to give her that emotional security, 100%. That emotional support, right? And this is part of the mental wellness and emotional resilience and intelligence, is understanding that you have to give more of yourself as a man. You are a provider. You want to be called a man. You want to be called the guy that stands up. This is what you do.
And to me, like that means we go first in everything.
Yes.
Apologies, hugging, affection. Yeah. Like, again, my other mentor that I've mentioned before has talked about my wife is a reflection of my husbandry. So the way I lead and the way I act is what I'm going to get out of her.
100%.
So if I'm a dick and a complete asshole, guess what I'm going to get in return? She's not going to show very much love and affection for me. If I'm not kind and loving, like if I show even my kids, like if I show my kids this, right?
Yeah.
And I think like kind of getting back into all this, right? When you let responsibility of life take over, and you've never crossed out of that childhood mentality, right? And you think because you've got the job and you're providing and you're doing all this stuff for my family,
I'm now entitled to this.
I'm entitled that I'm a man and I'm doing what I'm supposed to do. And again, guilty. I lived this. Okay. Well, that's just not it.
Nope.
That's not the ticket. The reality is, like, if you don't prioritize your mental wellness and your physical wellness ahead of everything, you can't effectively love everyone else.
And as much you'll suffer, but they are going to suffer worse.
They will suffer worse.
100%.
100%. Like, I can't wait to do I'm working on my right arm now, but my left arm tattoo is the chains of our fathers will be the chains of our sons and daughters unless we break them.
Yeah. That'll
be on my left arm because everything like that I do as a man and as a father and as a husband and as a leader around my direct world affects other people's, and it's generational.
Yeah.
And my children alone, like if I don't like make sure that I'm helping them to be the best versions of themselves and breaking my own chains, guess what they're not going to do? They're not going to break theirs.
They won't. And it's the fundamental that goes down in knowing that in order to do that, you have to put yourself together in order to be there for everyone else. Right.
Yeah, totally.
And it's a question that I've started asking a lot of people, right? Is you'll constantly hear people talk and they'll go, especially men, this is a man thing, right? I will die for my family. I will bleed for my family. I'll do this. Great.
This is a good one.
However, will you live for your family?
Let's go.
Will you train for your family? Mm-hmm. Will you give up the things you love to give them more of what they love for your family?
Mic drop.
Will you eat clean for your family?
Yep.
Will you do those things that you don't want to do because they love it for your family?
That's right.
Will you live for your family? Because it's easy to say, I'll die for my family, because then you're dead and it's done.
Yeah.
But living on a day-to-day basis takes work.
Oh, yeah.
And in order to do that, you have to give up. And when you give up, I promise you, it sounds like I'm saying, oh, you're just giving up. No. By giving, you get back so much more.
No doubt.
That is how you want to live.
100%.
Don't die. If you say you're going to die family, we all will, right? Will you live for them?
Man, I went to a this was fresh on my mind on Saturday. I told you about the celebration of life I went to.
Yeah.
Tragic situation, man. Such a horrible situation. Hit by a drunk driver head on New Year's Eve. Family did everything they were supposed to do, and unfortunately, Daniel passed. But anyway, in this whole ceremony, that dude lived a life, man.
Yeah.
Like, loved, did things with his family, prioritized, like, just loved life.
Yes.
Had a great time. Like, it caused me to stop and pause and go, man, I need to be better.
Yes.
And, like, seeing this dude, he died at 45 years old. And it's a sad situation. But I packed house, okay? And I don't even know how many people. It was a church. It was a big church, full. And I go, that dude did it right. That dude was loved. He loved his family.
Yes.
He lived a purpose-filled life, but he had experiences, and everyone that had anything to say about the guy couldn't think of a bad thing to say.
Yeah.
And my point of even bringing that up is that, like, we're not guaranteed tomorrow.
No.
And if I'm on this journey of uncovering and building the best version of myself, like, who do I want to be? How do I have to get there? Who do I have to become to be that guy? When you go home, that's when your real job starts.
Yes.
Right? That's why we're all here. That's why we're all doing this. And if you think like I don't want to be known as the guy that's got the black cloud over my head.
No.
Because I know people like this. We both do.
Yeah.
And I don't want to be that guy.
You want to be the energy that draws people to you for the right reasons.
I want people to come up to me and want to ask me about fitness and health and well-being. And what did you do, man? How did you get to the place that you're at? Why is that?
And we've been doing this for a while now. And I can tell you the response we've gotten from people in regards to how this has affected them on a personal level, because we're real about how we're dealing with things, is all I see is these people who want to make these fundamental changes to be the best version of themselves. And that leads me to the next thing, right? So we've gone through a couple of tools. You first of all have to be super honest with yourself. You have to forgive yourself. You need to sit down and be quiet with yourself and let your thoughts process. You have to go to your past.
A really simple one to add is journal.
Yeah,
so
journaling is great.
About things helps tremendously.
Go to those people in your past that you feel was wrong, especially the ones you love, and have an open discussion about it, right? Do those affirmations, forgive yourself. Exude positivity in you, not in others. Don't expect other people to be positive. Be the change you want to see in the world. You want to be a good person, be that person. And then the next one is, and I think this is a fundamentally important one, and this one I struggle with it at times, but I've trained myself, as I'm sure you have, to make this really a priority in my life. Be in the present. Right? Be in the now, because again, as we've said in the past, if you live in the past, you're living in depression. If you live in the future, you're living in anxiety, right? Yeah. Being in the moment, right now, knowing that I can only control what I can control, and I'll take that on and I'll make that happen, right? If you live in the present, you can never be overwhelmed, ever, right? No matter what may happen, may go in. Because what might happen, you cannot control that. Yeah. All I can control is the actions I put in right now where I am. And if you sit in that with the mindset of, I'm going to be the best version of myself, I'm going to be present in the situation, I'm going to make this present time because it's all I have. Yeah. There was a great analogy I saw. It's a guy with he's got a big, what do you call it, a sand glass. Yeah. Right. So as the time's running through, he's explaining, he goes, you've got this massive piece over here, and it's a massive piece on there, and this little part here. Actual present time is your actual life's only in the tiny little part where that grain of sand falls through.
It's true.
That's all it is. That's how, as time's falling through. You just have that little bit of time. If you're so focused on these two big things that don't really actually affect your day to day, you're going to fall into depression or anxiety. Right now, I know a lot of men suffer with depression. A lot of them suffer about the best version they could be. And you were talking about someone, that's close to us that we're trying to help, that's focusing on what he's going to be. No. What you're going to be is all done now. Yeah. Right. Yes, there's lots of things we want to attain. Right. But in order to attain those things, I have to bring myself back to the present. Yeah. And I have to be here now. Yeah. And, as analogies, and whenever you're trying to grow, growth is not spontaneous. Growth doesn't happen magically, right? In anything you do. You have to take it a piece at a time, and you have to then, as you've always said, you have to become accustomed and enjoy the journey.
That's right.
Because if you're so focused on the outcome, what you're going to do is you're going to go through a process where you don't appreciate where you're coming from.
Yeah, totally. Well, and I think we're both former athletes, so we're so accustomed to, like, you have this goal or season or match or objective that you're trying to accomplish, and those are all great and well, but the reality is it doesn't necessarily translate to life. That is the journey.
That's the only goal is life, right?
Correct. And so if you go ahead.
Let me give you an insight there, right? And then I want your expansion on this. Your goal is life, right? And that goal outcome doesn't happen in the future. It hasn't happened in the past. It only happens now. Yeah. That's all you have.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And I think, like you said, with the past being fear and the future being anxiety, we know someone that we're working with on this, and I lived there too, where it's almost what's the word, debilitating. Yeah. When you live in that anxiety of the future. Yeah. Like it doesn't allow you to truly reach your potential. Yeah. And I'm I know I'm not trying to articulate this. I'm not where I want to be, but I really, really, really like the guy I see in the mirror.
You like who you are. And that doesn't mean you don't improve. That doesn't mean you don't grow. We're all going to grow, and we're never going to stop. But you have to appreciate where you are.
It's true. And I am really proud of the guy that I see in the mirror right now. I'm really proud of how far I've come, and I can't even imagine what the guy's going to look like in a year from now, right? But I'm not worried about what the guy's going to be in a year from now because I just know that the lifestyle I'm at and the way I'm living my life is something I won't change from. And I've even had people make me offers of they would pull me away from it, and I'm like, nah,
I'm good.
I'm really happy where I'm at, and I really like what I'm doing, and I think it's a journey to get to this place. Yes. And forgiveness is a critical component of it, or grace, you could use that word. You have to accept that, you were doing the best you could with what you knew and what you had, right? So now you're on this quest of saying, I'm going to figure things out, and we'll probably never figure it out.
It's a constant growth point, right?
Yeah.
And that leads me to the next one, right? So the next fundamental that I feel as a man you have to incorporate, and this one I often feel is the most difficult for people to stick to, right? It's relentless. Relentless. When I say relentless, this is every day, all the time, right? Repetitive consistency.
Yeah.
Right. Relentless, repetitive consistency. Everything we spoke about, this isn't a once-off. It's not one day I'm going to look in the mirror and go, oh, I'm going to be good today, and then tomorrow you forget about it. This is if you want to make fundamentals and changes in your life.
Yeah.
It's like everything else, right? Yes, a lot of what we're talking about is a mental shift where you start being better, you're acting better, but most of the time to ingrain that in yourself is having the discipline to consistently, relentlessly, repetitively do this over and over and over again. Because what happens is if you practice that, at some point, that repetitive consistency, as it happens within weight training, as it happens within life, if you can take it and you can realize that the same way that you would apply this in the gym, the same way you would apply this in an entrepreneurial standpoint, also transfers to emotional standpoints. Because what happens is once you get that consistency going and you repeat it and you relentlessly repeat it, at some point you're going to forget about that. Yeah. And it's going to become ingrained in habit, lifestyle forming. And then that's just who you are.
Yeah, and that's, I think, where most, I'll just say Americans probably fail the most, is that we want instant gratification, and this isn't instant gratification. No. It's something that, 3 weeks of chicken and rice is going to cause you to lose a few pounds, but it's not going to keep you where you want to be if you go back to eating fucking cheeseburgers all the time.
And that talks about, as you said, if you're setting a goal, and goals are not bad, but they can also be debilitating. Yeah. Because if you set a goal and go, oh, I want to lose 20 pounds, and then, okay, so what happens when you lose the 20 pounds? You can do one or two things. You can either be in control of how you eat, enjoy the process, right? When you want to lose some pounds, realize that you have to go into a deficit. When you want to gain some weight, you do it the other way. But realize that there's a band, and you have to stay within that band. It's not, well, I did that, now I'm going to just go back to what I was doing. What you were doing didn't work, right? So listen to the insane concept that I'm going to explain to you, right? This is how people's brains work and how people approach things. I am going to go, now this could be a diet, this could be quitting something that you've been doing, this could be learning a new skill. I am going to apply this thing for the next 8 weeks. And then I'm going to hit a set point of a goal that I set. Yeah. And then once I hit the goal, I'm done. Yeah. Right. Okay, so what you're telling me is, for 8 weeks, you are going to consistently, relentlessly follow something. And then at the end of 8 weeks, you're just going to stop what you're doing, go back to what you were doing, but you're expecting to keep the results. It's insanity. It is. If you want to keep results, you have to be disciplined in how you apply them and make sure. And then you have to find a balance.
One of the things, I had a conversation with someone about meal prepping. Yeah. And basically they were saying how hard it is for them to meal prep and how they struggle to do it. Yes. And I'm like, really? Because my whole point of even thinking of it, I have forgotten what it's like to feel like it's hard.
But why?
To meal prep, because it's become such a habit for me.
Because what you did was you adapted and you said, I'm going to go, and you rewrote it. And then what you applied was relentless consistency. Correct. You went and you said, I'm going to do this, and you didn't stop. And then the first couple of weeks, like, wow, okay, I got to prep, and then you get up. Now,
I don't even think about it.
It's just what you do.
I don't even think about it. Like, if I see a tray, like our thing, the way we prep is trays of meat. Yeah. We do trays of meat, and then always have rice available, and she's eating gold potatoes right now. So we always have gold potatoes in baggies for her. Always prepped. Yeah. The things that we need, like,
so you don't have to think about it.
Yeah, and like the sourdough bread is one of the things that she would have at a period of time, and we would always have that handy and available. We would keep an extra bag in the freezer just in case she ran out of the one. We would always have peanut butter ready to go for her rice cake. We would have the avocados there for her. We would have the greens that she needed ready. All of it's there because we don't have to think about it, but we've just established that as our routine of life, okay? And again, like, I think a topic we're going to talk about soon is fad diets, but like, you're going to yo-yo if you don't make it a lifestyle. Yeah. And that yo-yoing is horrible for you.
And here's the thing is if I'm 100% honest, right, human beings by nature will yo-yo.
Yeah.
Right? There's very few people in the world that just, this is my weight and I'll be like, you get them, but it's very,
I guess when I say yo-yo, I'm thinking about the 100-pound swings that people go through.
You're not wrong in what you're saying. What I'm saying is, let's put it in perspective, right? There's yo-yoing, right?
Yeah.
So, I yo-yo between losing and gaining 50 pounds, right? And then there's yo-yoing where this is the normal band of operations.
Yeah.
Sometimes my calories are a little bit higher. I'm trying to focus on a certain thing.
Yeah,
I go
which we're
10
both
pounds
dabbling
up.
with our calories.
Or I go down and I go 10 pounds down. Great. So you have a band. And then what happens is if you stay in that band and you forgive yourself and you don't beat yourself up, you're living a good life.
Yeah.
But what makes the difference in this is that resilience, right? And then that repetitive consistency that you just keep doing. You just keep pushing. Because eventually, once you do that, it becomes a habit. Once it becomes a habit, it becomes a lifestyle. And now this is how you live.
Yeah, and the lifestyle part of it, like when you were talking about a refeed before we recorded today, refeed, like we both like other like shit foods, but we don't do it all day, every day. We do it once a week or whatever the meal plan dictates at the time. And like a guy we had a conversation with was like feeling guilt about having his refeed, and we're like, no, bro, like you earned this, like enjoy the shit out of it. Like
it's not the word cheat meal sucks.
It does.
Right? Because it sounds like you're cheating. You're not cheating.
It's a negative connotation.
You are increasing your calories, right? And it's a relief to your body because
I had to go through this too.
When you go through a period and you've been on a calorie deficit and you've put your body under pressure, sometimes what happens is your body will hit a standing point. It stops responding because it feels like I have to hold on to absolutely everything or I'm going to lose nothing. Then what happens is you introduce it to an abundance of calories, right? And then what happens is your body goes, oh, I'm good. And then you'll see all of a sudden you just drop. Yeah. So it's a mindset thing because you got to get away from beating yourself up. And we as men do this a lot, right? We're like, either you're so OCD, you're either completely off the wagon this side, or you're so heavily tied to the wagon you can't see where you're going. Yeah. Right. So you've got to find that balance between, and you have to forgive yourself.
Yeah. And I think that was kind of a point I was wanting to make with this is like, that particular guy was having so much guilt around having this refeed, or in his mind it was a cheat meal because of where he had been and what he was. And I dealt with this too. Like I had to like realize like, no, it's okay, and your body needs this. And honestly, like now when I have refeeds, it's like I have one Saturday night, and I think it took me 30 seconds to finish everything, and it was delicious, and I didn't even feel any remorse other than it was just delicious. But you have to get to that place mentally to forgive what's happened of the past. But this is all tied to mental wellness, right? You have to forgive yourself of what you've been through. And yes, you may not look in the mirror just yet. I wanted to make a point about this real quick too. You may not like what you see in the mirror just yet, but recognize that it's a journey and it's a process, and this is a part of it. Okay. And one of the things I want to talk about the mirror thing real quick is if you're not happy with the person that you see in the mirror, then don't not look at them. Yeah. I think that I have someone in mind that I'm thinking about that won't look at himself in the mirror. And I literally had to say, and it's like, as we're doing some reps, I'm like, look at that fucking guy right now. Yeah. Look at him. Stare him down.
There's an interesting story behind that. Right. So in the 70s, I think late 60s, early 70s. So Arnold Schwarzenegger, he arrives in America, right? And bodybuilding in Europe was very different. Right, bodybuilding in Europe, the way they structure people. So he gets to America, and there's this massive guy, big chest, huge arms, big back. Right, he gets there, and everyone's laughing at him because he has no calves. Right, there's nothing there. So what does he do?
That's Arnold, right?
That's Arnold, right? So what does he do? He cuts off every single pair of pants he has above the knee, every single one. He said, you know what? I have what I have, but in order to make it better, I have to face it every single day. I want to see it, so I have that drive to go. You know, who I am, I'm okay with, but I am going to make this better every single day. So he faced that adversity within him and go, you know what, I'm going to make this better. He used it to fuel him. And this is the same thing as when you look in the mirror, you can sit there and you can hate yourself. What you should do is you go, I love myself, but you know what? I can be better. Yep. And then you start applying the work. Yes. And that work is what really makes the difference. And this goes into the next one that I want to say is probably the next step of what I think is important for men to isolate. You have to be very careful of how you take in information, right? You've got to realize that we live in an information age. Yeah. With that being said there's a lot of great people out there. I mean, I listen to a lot of people, right? If I had to take the advice from every single person I wouldn't have enough time in the day and I'd kill myself. Yeah. But what I do is I listen to what they're saying and I take that information in because the information is good, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes it might not apply to me, but I'm still getting information in. And then what I'll do is I'll take pieces of that information and I will test out what works for me.
Yeah.
Right. Whether this be dietary, emotional communication, it doesn't really matter, but I'll take information. Now, what you want to do is you want to listen, read, and absorb as much information as you can.
Yeah.
And then you need to put yourself into a system of going, okay, based on my lifestyle, you've got to be very operational. What is my life like? What do I like? What do I not like? Right? Because you could listen to one guy who says to you, you need to take these supplements, you need to eat just this and do just that. He's giving you a perspective of what has worked for him and maybe a handful of people he works with.
Yeah.
Right. What you've got to do is you've got to look at those things, and the more information you absorb, the more you can put yourself into position to take control of your own health,
Right.
your own mental wellness, your own spiritual wellness. Right. If you're going to follow everything that's a fad, right, and we're going to have a whole episode on fad diet specifically. If you're going to take everything as a fad and then switch over, what happens is you're never going to have a set point. What you have to do is you have to create a set point. Now, there's good baselines, right? I always talk about starting on a carnivore diet. It doesn't work for everybody, but it's a good place because, why do I say it? Because you're starting with base amino acids, right? So you're starting with the most basic thing your body needs. And then what you do is you kind of expand. Not everybody can eat the same, right? And there's multiple different ways of doing it. And it's in you, the same as we had Danelle and her husband on you, right, Jeremy? They have chosen a route, but they have done a lot of research and felt it out to find a position where they feel good about themselves and everything works. That is on you. There's good information. And, you know, in our groups is if you join our community, you'll be given aspects of different, and we'll ask you questions. You know, what is your blood type? We'll try and guide you on learning the best methods of realizing what works and what does not work for you. Right. And it works on all levels, you know, whether it goes to spirituality, you know, are you religious, right? In your religion, how do you perceive things? Because prayer and meditation are essentially the same thing, but the mindset and how you approach them are slightly different.
Right.
You know, when we're talking about mental wellness, how we have traumas and where we are is different for everybody.
Yep.
So we want to give as many tools as possible, but the tools are not designed to tell you, you must go this way.
Right.
The tools are designed for you to learn how to better manage what works for you and then find that baseline. Not everybody wants to be a big muscular guy, right? Everyone says they want abs. Not everyone wants to go through the work to get it, and that's okay. But what you do want to do is you want to be the best version of yourself, and you want to use as many tools. So listen to as much as possible, but be very wary of how you take in information. Realize that there's a ton of information out there, and you'll listen to an episode of Joe Rogan, and then Sean Ryan, and maybe you'll listen to another podcast. And you'll have three different people. You're giving you three different aspects of perspective of what they did, and they're completely different. And sometimes they bump heads with each other. That's okay. What you want to do is you want to realize that each of those people are talking about a perspective of where they've seen and what they've experienced. You know, a good example is Andrew Huberman has got a great supplement stack for sleep. Right. It's very intimidating when you send it to people because it's okay. Got to take this now and got to do that. And what I explain to people, I say, that's everything he says you should take, right? I said, but I don't even follow their supplement regime. What I did was I took what he gave. I went and got the things that I felt were, you know, one, affordable, two, were consistent. You know, like I don't want to plan my sleep about what I take every 3 days. You know what I mean? Like it's got to work within my lifestyle.
Right.
So I want to find a range of things that I can take at a certain time that give me the benefit of it without having to go completely into the deep end, right? This is how you manage. You find those things that work for you from exercise. I don't say everyone should go to gym. I think as men, if you're capable, at some point you need to work towards lifting heavy weight because it's going to benefit you long term. But in the same breath, if you don't like spending that time in the gym, there's 100 different ways that you can expend energy to get the benefits out.
For sure.
I will always guide people towards heavy weight training because the benefits are scientifically documented. And as a man, you want to be strong and capable.
It's just therapeutic too.
100%, right? But you also want to be flexible. You also want to be mobile. You want to be able to do things as much as possible on a constant basis. You have to find a connection of how to put that together that suits your lifestyle, and then be willing to change your lifestyle to adapt to be the best version of yourself.
No doubt.
So absorb information. It's great. Take as much in as possible. Listen to different people. There's going to be more you resonate with than others you don't resonate with. But what you need to do is you need to take the best aspects of those and you need to design a lifestyle that gives you that purpose of being the best version of yourself. So be careful of how you absorb information. Don't absorb it blindly. Right?
Yeah.
Absorb everything with a pinch of salt. Do your own research. This falls into this category. You have to be willing to learn, right? Because when we're talking about this, we talk about the physical and nutritional side, right? So great, I can give you a workout program and tell you what to eat. At some point, you're going to have to figure out a process, as you have. You guys have a prep system. You have a diet system that you follow, right? This is my nutrition plan. This is what we eat, and I'm good.
Yeah.
Right? I've got the same thing.
Yeah.
But we can give you a starting point, and then we'll teach you how to.
I'm recognizing, just a sidebar to that, and I'll give my final thought on this episode. A lot of people, like, what I rattle out now is just second nature of how to meal prep, what to cook, what to eat. In my mind, it's really, really simple.
Yes.
But it's overwhelming for a lot of people.
100%.
So I think to get started, again, for us in the community, we're going to help you get started, and then eventually it's going to be like this for you. But I'm realizing the more people I talk to, the more eating healthy and well, everybody has a misconception that it's expensive, and then they don't know what to cook. Yeah. And that's really not as expensive as you think it is, and it's actually much more simple to prep than you think it is. And we'll help you with the tools on that.
And it's not just what to eat. It's also the mental, right? Your mental wellness aspect of what is your relationship with food. Yeah. Right. We're going to dive into that too. We're going to give you
an episode
and understand and let you know that your relationship with what you think
100%
is not what it really is. We've had discussions. I talk about the nostalgia of food. So what happens is, as you live through life, there'll be times where you spend, especially when you're younger, right? It might be a summer that you're spending with your dad. You just turned 21. You crack your first beer. You got all your friends around, your dad's around. You drink that beer, and that feeling is amazing. The sun's shining. You had a great day. What happens is you associate that feeling with a can of beer.
Yeah.
The beer, and then what happens is you spend the next 40 years of your life cracking your beer every day, hoping to regain that feeling. So you're driving on nostalgia instead of realizing that nostalgia was one day, and that's wonderful. Have the memory, have it, but understand that that's memory. What you want to do is you want to create new memories and new experiences consistently, and following this plan gives you the ability to find what works for you.
We'll probably do a whole episode on this, but I even am thinking of someone we're helping where they're punishing themselves with food because of where they got to.
Yes.
And what I'm like routinely reiterating is that you got to eat the food to get to where you want to be.
Yes.
And you're not to punish yourself around the food. Like, there's things that, like, I added to his meal plan so that he actually gets a little bit of taste and enjoyment out of it, and it's not punishment.
Yeah, it's a starting point.
Yeah, it's retraining the mind. Yeah. My final thoughts would be, my dad's turned wrenches. He's got a business doing all that for a long time, and he's got this like massive toolbox. Yeah, that's really, like, I think he's got a couple $100,000 worth of tools, if I'm not mistaken. He doesn't use every tool for every job, right? He uses the right tool for the job in front of him. And he's got all the tools there.
Yeah.
Okay. Every job requires a different tool.
Yes.
Every situation in your life, you can't throw the whole toolbox at it. You have to know which tool to use, and that's what we're here to help you with. Is that we're going to give you a whole bunch of tools, and then even go so far as to guide you with the right tool to use.
Yes. If
you don't use them, that's on you.
Yeah.
Right. You can sit here and make excuses or whatever you want to say, but we're going to help guide you with the right tools. Yeah. Our podcast is a tool.
Yes.
We're sharing our experiences with you. You can learn a lot from this podcast alone. If you want more than that, come to our community. We're going to give you even more stuff and dive even deeper. But you have to be the one that does it. Yeah. You have to turn the actual wrench.
It's a word that my wife uses, in what she does, and it's all help is self-help. Mm-hmm. Right? Regardless of who's giving it to you.
Yep.
The only person who
chose to do it.
You can only help yourself, right? Everything else is, as you said, a tool to get you to where you want to be, but you are responsible for the help. And my final thoughts on today's podcast is, regardless of everything we said, we talk about be the change in the world and add all those different tools we spoke about. But I think the most important thing is, if you wake up as a man every day and you live your life in love and kindness, that doesn't mean that you're a pushover. That doesn't. Don't confuse kindness with weakness. 100%. Right? It means you stand up for yourself, but you are kind and loving in how you treat everybody in the world. You be that person. I promise you, day one, your day is going to be better.
Yep.
And then start applying the tools, and you'll see that the world is a lot brighter and nicer than you think it is.
Agreed.
right? And we can all get there. We're on our journey to it. Honestly, days seem brighter every day I get up.
Yeah.
You know, I get to spend it with the most amazing people in the world because I brought that to me.
Yeah.
You brought that to you. And that is what it's about. It's about finding that point where you sit. Even in the journey, we'll always be on the journey, but at some point you sit in that journey and, you know, you're basically think of it like a barge in the ocean, right, or on a river. And you're going down. At some point you sit down and go, wow, my life's damn good.
Yeah, oh yeah.
That's where you want to be. That's where we are. That's where we want to stay, and that's what we want to build on.
No doubt.
Okay. Thanks everybody.